Dive into our next session. So offline payments have previously been understood as a transaction that is recorded offline and proceeded at a later point in time and processed. However, defining the impact of offline payments is not as straightforward as it might seem. So let us learn more about the impact of offline payments in a digital world, robustness, privacy, and inclusion. I'd like to take the pleasure of inviting our moderator for this panel, Mr. Joachim Samuelsson, the CEO at Crunchfish AB, to kindly join us up on stage. Let's have a big round of applause and welcome Mr. Joachim Samuelsson. Thank you so very much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you.
And I'd like to invite our esteemed panelists up on stage. Please do join me in inviting them up with a round of applause. I welcome Mr. Prasanna Lohar, the CEO at Blockstack. Let's have a round of applause and welcome Mr. Prasanna. I believe he'll join us shortly. I'd like to invite Ms. Lalitha Nataraj, Head Digital Partnerships, D2C, Business and Payments at IDFC First Bank. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to welcome Mr. Mehul Mistry, Global Head Strategy, Digital Financial Services and Partnerships at Wibmo, a PayU company. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. I'd like to invite Ms. Neha Gupta, Director at Prepaid Payments, Amazon Pay. Let's have a round of applause and welcome her up on stage. Thank you for joining us, ma'am. And I believe Mr. Lohar will be joining us shortly. In the meanwhile, please do take your seats. Requesting for Mr. Prasanna Lohar, sir, if you're around, if you would please join us now. So we'd like to welcome Mr. Prasanna Lohar. Thank you, sir, for joining us. And with that, I hand over to our moderator, Mr. Joachim, to take this session forward. Thank you, sir.
Are these on? Yes. Hello, everybody. I am Joachim Samuelsson, CEO of a Swedish company, Crunchfish. We've been pioneering offline payments for 4 years, and it's great to be here at this sort of fantastic event. It's almost you get sort of almost rock star feeling. I was in with a big session in the big hall. It's just an amazing event, and also being in India. We've been focusing on India for a long time, and just like they said in that session I was in, this is the place to be. When it comes to real-time payments, India does lead the world. It's just amazing to be here and discussing a topic that I think adds something to this scene of payments in India, offline payments. And for all of you here, offline payments, what we're going to talk about is no internet payment. Sometimes you talk about offline payments, you mean in-store payments in contrast to e-commerce, but it's sort of a tool for resilience. What happens if not everything is working? Maybe the payer doesn't get connectivity, maybe the merchant is not connected, or something is wrong in the back end. That's sort of the problem we're trying to address. Because it's important for a public good like payments to be robust. It cannot only work when everything works. It needs to work even if something goes sort of wrong. And before I go on, I like to introduce this excellent sort of panel. I want to thank the organizer for helping us to bring this together. I'll start to my left here, ladies first, with Lalitha. And perhaps you can introduce a little bit yourself and maybe your experience with offline payments if you want to as well. But who are you?
Sure. My name is Lalitha. I work for IDFC First Bank. Been in the payment space for the last few years. I guess there are multiple problems that we are set to solve in the payment industry, and lack of internet connectivity or blips in internet connectivity is one of them. So I guess offline payments is one of the spots where we will need to solve, and happy to be a part of this panel with my esteemed panelist, and you will see what unfolds.
All right, let's move to you, Mehul, then.
Hi, my name is Mehul, and I head strategy and partnership for Wibmo, which is a PayU company. And I've been a banker for about 20 years and recently moved into the platform play. And as far as offline payment is concerned, specifically in India, okay, there is a vision from central bank as well as NPCI to have about 1 billion transaction coming up on a daily basis. Okay, and for that to happen, today we are talking about 50 million merchants and about 250 million consumers, okay, transacting on UPI. For that to scale, probably offline payment could be an alternative method for allowing this transaction to happen. Yeah.
Thank you. I guess, should we do ladies first here on this side as well? So Nia from Amazon.
Thank you, Joachim, for the introduction. So I'm from Amazon Pay. I look after the prepaid products at Amazon. I've been with Amazon for about 9 odd years, and primarily in the payment space. I think very excited to be part of this panel and talking about this subject. I think just taking forward from what Mehul was talking about, like 440 million customers who really are on feature phones definitely are excluded from this wave of digital payments. But I think all of us are also at times excluded. So this topic is a lot about inclusion, because on day-to-day basis, whether it is blind spots like basements, parking lots, malls, like high-rise buildings, we suffer from internet connectivity, either low internet or no internet. And the topic is very relevant. And if we don't solve for it, I think true digital payment innovation is not going to kind of land to that 1 billion goal, what I think we've set up for ourselves as India. So really looking forward to the conversation with this esteemed panel. Thank you, GFF.
Thank you, Nia. And last but not least, Prasanna from Blockstack.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Joachim, for the introduction. I am at Blockstack as a CEO. I'm a founder at the India Blockchain Forum, worked with multiple banks in India as a part of a Worldline, where I was a pioneer into EMV card certificates back in 2010-11. I have seen the banking on and off as a chief digital officer or innovation officer at a DCB bank. We've done a lot of innovations. We're good to see that we're part of that momentum where UPI or a RuPay has started adopting in India. And as a part of a digital rupee or a CBDC in India, where not only India, but at least 100 plus countries are working on this interoperable CBDC, it's very, very important to see how multiple use cases can come in a nation as well as international, considering the payment next level adoption. I think offline is a one game, while we say that we are in the era of 4G or 5G, soon we'll touch 6G, but still there is a long way to go, where not only consumers who are human beings, but also devices will be part of this whole momentum. And the payment will not be the only one who will be initiated by the customers, will be initiated by the devices altogether. So in this era, I think online, offline is a way to look at it, and it's good to see that which is that extensive offline payment method can bring lot of adoption. I think the way we see UPI adoption in India and the way many countries are adopting CBDC, I think the power of innovation, where we talk about scalability, security, interoperability as a part of various concept nodes by not only RBI, but many other countries. Offline is one of those challenging factor, and look forward for this discussion, how we can resolve this overall momentum.
Thank you. So that's the panel. A pretty, I again must applaud the organizer. We have a bank here, we have a major e-wallet, we have Prasanna here coming from the CBDC direction and blockchain understanding, and then Mehul here as well from a payments platform. So it's a lot of good experience around the table. What we'll structure this session is that we'll start with the why. Why offline? Why is it important? Why can't we all could pay. Why isn't it sort of enough just having it online? Why should we ever go offline? Let's start with that for a little while. But then move on to the how. So if we are introducing offline payments, what does that introduce in terms of challenges? Is it just business as usual, or are new challenges that needs to be solved introduce themselves going to offline? Security challenges for one thing. And then we'll end up with talking about the what. What are the use cases that we see? We certainly already have some offline cases. Myself, I come from Sweden. We are the most cashless society in the world. If you ask a Swede, when did you last see cash? People will have to think. And they come up with, maybe it was somewhere last year. That's how little cash we have right now circulating in our country. But that's a problem for us because we become very vulnerable. Cash is sort of the ultimate offline tool and gives a lot of resilience in an ecosystem. You can always then resort to cash. But what happened in a country which has gone so far in digitization that cash is not really around anymore? You don't carry it. Then you become vulnerable. Sweden, we use a lot of card payments. That's sort of what we do. And if you think of it, when you have a card, you are offline. You are very much offline with a card. And with some credit risk limits, you could also then, even if the receiving side, the payment terminal is offline, is still allowed. So we do have that. But sometimes in our country, we get off track when maybe the back end, some banks are down or something, and no one can pay in the whole country. That's what we experience. And we don't have cash, as I said. Big problem. So we need to introduce in our country, but I think as well as in a country like this, offline payments. Let's start with the why a little bit here then, and introduce, put sort of the question sort of on, because I look upon the why for offline payments as both from the user side, you don't get connectivity, but also that things could go down in the back end. Things can be down. These are the reasons what can happen. And I want to start with just asking someone here that, how common is it that you are not having internet connectivity? How common is that as a problem? I don't know, Lalitha, do you want to?
So talking about why, right? I think the time was when we used to carry cash as a backup because somebody would not accept a digital payment. Now we're carrying cash as a backup only because what if I don't get the connectivity to pay?
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of a worry in everybody's mind. It's not that it's looming large, but there is a worry. There are blips in the internet. There are spots where your telecom works, but you have internet blips. So it's important to carry. Second, from a why point of view, right? India, as you are aware, is venturing into central bank digital currency. Central bank digital currency is being quoted as closer to cash. When I am closer to cash, I need to have 100% payment because if I'm carrying cash in my wallet, there is no way I will succumb to lack of connectivity or internet, right? The third one, we are launching UPI for foreign nationals, right? When foreign nationals come to India, they're going to be using our UPI app. So in all these scenarios, right, you should have a must succeed phenomenon when you go into the market because they may not have a backup, right? So that's the reason why I think the why is very important, and there are multiple blips in the communication network because of which the need for why becomes stronger, not just for these use cases, but also for people like you and me.
So if I can just add to that, I think I feel the why is very important to build the customer trust and kind of really just hone on that. I think that's where it is important, and I think it ties up to the RBI vision as well. When RBI has talked about, from a vision point of view, that they want payment systems to be safe, secure, convenient, fast, and accessible. And if all these 5 dimensions have to be met, I think offline is a very important aspect that needs to be solved. Like only solving for online, I don't think so is going to solve for this 5 points in the RBI vision. So that's
no, I agree with you 100% that it's not about, offline is not about areas only in the hills where there is no internet whatsoever. It's about resilience. Yes. It's about the glitch that can happen. So it's a way to get an online system to be simply more resilient and work all the time. Prasanna?
I think I just agree with both of our speakers. Looking for why offline, look at UPI, right? How many transactions? We are very happy to say that every month or every year we meet billions of transactions on UPI. But if you look at the ticket size, and many of us can agree they use the UPI for tea, coffee or something, right? And it's not really great to see that at a national level we are having that scalability expectation from that system just for those small ticket size. And I think offline will be a better option to say that small ticket size we can always take a risk and to have a immediate payment. I think I will not be surprised UPI also come on offline sooner or the later. While we have a larger vision on central bank digital currency, I think that offline makes very, very important aspect. It's just like I am giving you cash. Nobody is aware, right? How can not they are aware? Maybe offline could be the better way. And the way I look at, you must have visited a lot of villages, and in those villages, if you want to do, or if you want to ask, do you have a card payment or digital payment back in 2016, you will say nothing is available, right? I have seen in my personal experience, and if you visit same location after 2-3 years, they have QR codes and many other areas, but still there is a still yet to do, although you have a BharatNet project to encompass all the digital territory as far as the internet is concerned, but there is a still a long way to go, the way it looks like and practically looking at. I think offline makes sense considering a lot of resilient factors and actual customer expectations and experience. On and off, having right architecture, any of those payment standards offline has played a major role. We have seen worldwide a lot of such use cases. QR is one use case, but today we deal around QR, which is online QR. So let's see how offline can we, there are a lot of methods how to do it, which we can discuss further, but the need is that to have a better security, better customer experience, right? It should work just like we do the paper currency exchange and so on and so forth, right? I think today when we talk about CBDC, which is just some minuscule transactions are happening. Tomorrow UPI CBDC coming into picture, not only RBI but other regulators also will start adopting a CBDC heavily. And that moment we'll start struggling or innovating offline nature or interoperable nature. So good to see that while we are building complete stack now, during pilot stage or various banks are working together. So it's very, very important. While I think offline we always spoken in the past also with NFC or peer-to-peer payment in some close user group at villages. But I think this is the right time to really bring on, that will bring actual adoption of a CBDC at all levels. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Just to add to this, so there are specific use cases, okay, where definitely offline will be required, okay, and that's what I was just thinking while I was listening to the conversation. So, for example, in-flight payment, okay, you can't do it online, you have to do it offline. Let's say somebody is traveling through sea, right? That route, most of the time you will see that there's no connectivity, and that is where an offline could work. Apart from this, there are specific, like dead spot in network, and that could happen in urban area as well. Let's say today in this building, okay, let's say if anybody wants to have a cup of coffee here, okay, and let's say if there is a QR code, you would have noticed that there's not much connectivity here in this building, while it's in BKC, one of the prime locations of Mumbai. For such transactions, okay, offline payment is something which could be which is where network could be dependent on for doing these offline payment transactions. That's one. Apart from this, as far as UPI is concerned, okay, what happens is that let's say for somebody to do a small ticket size transaction of 5 rupee, 10 rupee kind of a transaction, which can very easily happen through UPI. But the thing is that the network fee probably could make this transaction unviable for a small ticket size transaction, right? Because the network fee is generally like a standard 15 paisa, 25 paisa, 30 paisa kind of a transaction. So such transaction is best done on offline, right? And that's where I think NPCI is also trying to work to create something like UPI Lite, which will work going forward on an offline mode. So yeah, these are some of the specific use cases probably where offline could definitely help.
Yeah, we talked about resilience, and I think you mentioned as well in the beginning about scalability. We heard that 1 billion transaction a day, and I think I was in a session earlier this morning where they talked about 100 billion transaction per month, meaning 3 billion transaction every day, which is just enormous numbers. And I wonder, is the core banking system, maybe I should ask you, Lalitha, are you set up to handle that sort of volume that may come in if we're going to seriously scale up from where we are today, 10 billion up to 100 billion transaction? Or do you need offline payments as a way to offload the central ledger?
Yeah, so we need offline payments in two ways, right? One is from a consumer-initiated payment, where the consumer is not offline, is not online, where internet there's a blip or he's not available at all. Two is your core banking system's ability to cater to the low value, high volume transactions. So the second one is in a way being taken care, and we will need obviously more and more innovation there using UPI Lite and other things where we sort of have some kind of a shadow counting. But this is very important because every single rupee transaction cannot hit our CBS and look for a synchronous response immediately. So that's getting solved in some ways or the other, but this is an important problem to solve. The other important problem to solve is also the consumer initiated, where the consumer suffers from lack of internet or connectivity. Yes, these are real issues to be solved. Yes.
We have the title here, robustness, privacy, and inclusion. And let's just spend a little bit on privacy, because it's interesting with privacy that potentially offline payments can be a facilitator for more privacy. And I think we have heard when India is now introducing the digital rupee, that is an opportunity that people could actually, because everything, if you do say a UPI payments, what you've done is sort of seen by the banks. However, CBDC, I think, is designed a little bit to move to be more private. Maybe you want to comment on that, Prasanna, who have worked a lot with the specifications here for the digital rupee?
I think, yeah, if you go back in 2013-14, where RBI has announced the vision statement with UPI should come by 2016, which is made happen by RBI coming together along with NPCI and many bankers. And we are blessed with that momentum where bankers used to sit together in one room, used to test across bank transactions. And we never thought of this moment where we are talking about digital rupee or CBDC. But the way internationally, a lot of other countries are coming up, like China has launched yuan, digital yuan, Cambodia, or likewise 114 plus countries are working around, where 11 plus are live. There are some countries has done rollback also for a CBDC with the larger adoption of a better financial inclusion, better cross-border payments as an international transaction. And within India also, or within any nation, there is a huge cost for handling cash, moving cash from Chase banks to the ATMs. It requires a lot of manual work, and never know, it requires another set of a cash-based reconciliation, and even your merchant payments requires another set of a reconciliation. Back in 2016-17, NPCI worked on a Vajra kind of ecosystem to have a lesser degrees of reconciliations. But eventually, the way the world is moving around, you can see Bank International Settlement and many other bodies are bringing or appealing to have a global financial inclusion. CBDC is an answer for that. And likewise, we have seen my first masterclass to RBI or bankers back in 2019, and we have seen February 20 bulletin. Yes, RBI is going to work on digital rupee. That moment, it was called as a central bank digital currency as far as a global name is concerned. I think since February 22, we have seen larger momentum the way we have seen in budget. CBDC will come into picture, and great to see that within definite time we had a concept paper back in September 22. We have seen wholesale CBDC pilots picking off in November, then retail CBDC. And last 6 months, I think many bankers will tell how the greater degree of adoption is happening with the vision that millions of customers will come. Many banks are pushing it through SMSs, wider adoption of CBDCs. And there are other events are happening. We have seen Canara Bank coming up with interoperable UPI, and many other banks will also adopt that momentum. I think India CBDC will have a greater picture as a template for other countries, where many countries doesn't have a digital identity program like Aadhaar, or UPI like a railroad to plug in the money to the wallet. Maybe today we have started with the UPI, tomorrow we'll bring on savings account or credit cards or many other to bring on the money in a wallet. I think while we do all of these various methods to build on a CBDC, we need to really bring on a resilient or trust factor and a 0 degree of a reconciliation settlement, which typically can be happen with the help of a technology like blockchain. And many countries tried without blockchain, and eventually they turn out to be implement a blockchain implementation, because blockchain gives a degree that we can do instant settlement for every transaction between banks, while we are doing wholesale CBDC or retail CBDC. As an successful implementation of any country, we should look at 4 areas. First could be better monetary policies, where I think everybody knows how strong RBI is on a monetary policies, followed by is it centralized, decentralized, where blockchain could be an answer to become a decentralized architecture. Third could be whether it is a token-based or account-based, where most of the countries, including India, also adopted token-based architecture. That is why you could see demonetization of onto those wallets. And last but not the least, what use cases you will bring on? Is it a retail or is it some wholesale use cases, bank to bank, like cross-border payments and so on? I think with this vision, certainly we will see good degree of adoption. I think this is the topic for not only for a discussion, but for the actual need of a global financial literacy. Let's look forward how successfully India becomes a template for many other countries, because some of these countries has rolled back and they always look at how India will bring on this kind of a momentum. I think RBI, the way it is working on many hackathons along, not only in India level, but with the BIS. I think a lot of these challenges are expectations around interoperability, privacy, or scalability. I think we'll have a lot of answers. So I am also looking forward how Crunchfish innovations will become one of those path-breaking innovations for offline payments. Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else want to comment on the privacy aspects, if offline sort of is an opportunity for more privacy. I don't know, Mehul, if you or Lalitha, yeah.
Yes, so so let's say I'll pick up example of offline payment implemented on CBDC. Okay, so what happens is that CBDC has to function very similar to cash, while it's digital rupee. And let's say the moment I've removed cash and put it in my wallet, after that, what I do with my cash is something which, let's say, my bank would not know. I've removed that cash from an ATM. CBDC with offline could almost function like that. And hence, in order to ensure that the same level of privacy is been offered to an end individual, I think offline payment for let's say tier 3 city downwards, where there's no internet connectivity, and overall for anybody to maintain privacy for a CBDC kind of a transaction, I think it can be implemented using offline.
Yeah. Would we see the same sort of privacy if they start with CBD or the digital rupee? Will we see that on UPI as well? Would that be likely coming?
Yeah, I think for UPI that specific I would not compare, because UPI is a channel very similar to mobile banking or internet banking. So anybody who's transacting through a digital medium, whether it is internet, mobile, or UPI as a channel, I don't think so that privacy per se is something which one would be too much worried about, because here it's like money is there in my bank account, completely secure, and I'm using one channel to transact on that money that I have. But CBDC is slightly different, because here what is happening is I want to withdraw money and then I want to use that money. It's like after I have withdrawn, then I don't want anybody to basically have a view on where the money is spent, all that data, etc. So I think it's more, to my mind, it's something which is more related to CBDC than UPI. UPI is more of a channel.
Yep. So more privacy for the digital rupee then, rather than the sort of conventional sort of schemes. Let's move on to the how a little bit. If we are in agreement, we talked about resilience, potentially scalability, maybe privacy as well, as reasons to use offline payments. And so what does offline payment mean in terms of new challenges? Because one of the things, if you are off ledger, that you're doing a full offline transaction, that we talked about it for CBDC here, for instance, that the general ledger or the central ledger doesn't know about the transaction has happened. What does that mean? And what new challenges does that open up for?
So any new innovation comes with its risks of challenges, and fraud risks being one big challenge. So if you see the way the regulation is played out in India, they have been very, very slowly and steadily unlocking things. Even if you take things like UPI, right? UPI did not come with autopay in the first year. First they said UPI, then they said UPI collect, then they said UPI autopay, recurring payment. So it's a very gradual unlock. So if you pick up something like an offline payment, I think the easiest mitigant to put is probably the best of technology, and also a combination of, let's say, limits or something like that. So the customer, even if there is a loss or even if there is a fraud risk, it is limited to a particular extent. So there will be challenges around inability to sync during the day, which you are mitigating using limits. But then one might argue saying that, you know what, if I really had cash, I would not have limits, right? So I will need the limits to be removed. But all this will happen in due course over in a very calculated manner. But to begin with, I think the right use of technology, the right use case, the right ecosystem to use this particular use case, and limits can be one big mitigant to address some of the known and the unknown risks also.
Yeah, I mean, when you said, let's say what should be the limit, right? So, I mean, if you notice, there was a framework which was created by RBI. Initially, the limit was 200 rupees for doing offline payment. And recently, it's been increased to 500. And that's largely because, let's say if today the channel which has been used for instant payment, widely used channel in India is UPI. And on an average, 7 out of 10 transactions on UPI is below 500 rupees. And that's where they thought that, if let's say somebody has to enable offline for that channel to begin with, I think 500 is the decent limit for somebody to mitigate a risk in some form that may not prohibit any kind of a fraudulent transaction. But having said that, the risk is something which can be limited because of the transaction. Yeah.
So if I can add, I think from the how and what to be solved for, I think I have 3 points to add to, I think, what Lalitha and I think Mehul mentioned. So there's, the first part is, I think, the overall robustness of the solution in itself. I think the integrity, the robustness, because I think this is offline and it's a uncharted area overall. So I think how that is built and kind of invented, because we learn as we go along, I think, as it's been the journey. So I think that's one aspect. The second aspect is things do go wrong, even when you're trying to solve for the not working thing. So the customer service and how customer service supports when things go wrong, I think that's the second aspect. And the third aspect, which I feel is going to be very important, the right financial incentives to kind of really go behind this investment, because this is about another revolution on top of UPI. I think there's this just billions of dollars spent on training customers, the habit of shifting from cash to digital payments. And this is the next journey that we are kind of talking about, whether it is CBDC or whether it is about offline payments on stored value or other products in that sense. So I think do the ecosystem has the right financial investments, incentives to go behind the investments and the right motivations. I think that's going to be the third piece. And the fourth is the regulatory environment. I think as we learn, I think the standardization of guidelines, standardization of protocols, I think those will have to kind of go along for us to kind of scale it. So those are the 4 additional dimensions that I could think of that as we think about this space, I think will need to be solved as we go.
Definitely, I think offline is I think, as I said earlier, we tried offline with some kind of SMS technology, which was a little bit insecure, or NFC near field communication could be insecure as well as very costly. Coming back, as we know that customer experience is very, very important, and the experience should be just like how we pay the cash to each other, either to merchant or to your friends or relatives, and nobody knows like how much you have paid, and that's what the expectation is from a digital rupee or any of the central bank digital currency also. It should be completely anonymous. It should be private to the users what they are doing. Any banker or any regulator should not know what is that you are doing on an offline side. Now, when we talk about this aspiration, it may have a risk-based challenges, like how much to give a limit, right? As we know, there are a lot of innovations we have seen, contactless payments, and whenever it has happened, we have started with some kind of limits. Even ATM transactions without card, right? Cardless ATMs, it started with some limits. Or even you say, look at cardless or contactless transaction, we have started with some limits. And eventually we we evolved, and based upon the transactions which we have gathered and learnings from that, we increase those limits. And eventually what we will see, the way the mobile apps or experience is getting into customer's hand, customer eventually will select how much limit they want to put, and let that risk has to be there with the customer eventually, the way they see the evaluation of this transaction usage or CBDC usage or UPI usage, and let them control how much limit they want to put either online or offline, or let them control whether they want to do it online payment or offline payment. Now, while we are expecting a customer to decide, it all happens based upon what all use cases will bring on. And I think many of these use cases where we want a customer to use only for some purpose or only for peer-to-peer purpose, I think we need to look at all of these angles, technical angle, regulatory angle, customer experience, and all together then we can decide what is the best way to do step 1, step 2, or large scale step 3.
Yeah, no, I also think there is one problem you normally talk about when it's offline payments, and that's you've heard the term of double spending. Because if you don't connect to the central ledger, which can control that you can only as a payer spend some value once, that becomes a challenge if we introduce sort of offline payments. And in order to avoid that, you need to have integrity. Integrity both for the bearer instrument, where you sort of would hold something, a value offline, but also integrity for the actual offline payments itself. Both these two needs to be in place. So you need high security on the paying device, but you also need technology that can ensure end-to-end that there is integrity for the payment itself. Without that, you will set yourself up in a system for fraud that could happen. And one of the things I think is interesting with the aspect of financial incentive, but it's also interesting, I think, the aspect of who would take the risk. I don't know, are there scheme rules set up that who takes the risk if something goes wrong? Is that on the issuing side, or is that's on the acquiring side, or is this from the payment service? I don't know, Lalitha, is it always the banks that needs to pay if something goes wrong? But who is that established well for offline payments? Say who takes the burden of it?
We'll still go through the same dispute resolution process, and because we are trying to foster inclusion, because we are trying to promote digital payments in a big way, the benefit of doubt always goes to the customer to begin with, because we want to make sure that the customer anxiety is taken care first, and then settled between the issue and the acquirer. So we are, they'll follow the same ODR process, and it will get solved in a logical manner. That's the understanding that we have.
I just got a cue here from the side that we are sort of getting to the end, maybe 5 minutes more, and I just want to touch a little bit on the what as well. What use cases are there? Because I think this country particularly, I think have worked well. We have UPI Lite, which is it's offline in the sense that it takes the core banking a little bit out of the equation. The user has to be online in the current version, but it's sort of on ledger in the sense that it's still that you come back to the back end. And another use case, which is not off ledger as well, is, I think you touched on it, is use the SMS. Here at the FinTech Fest, you can see quite often that maybe you don't get data connectivity in terms of internet, but maybe you can make a phone call with your phone, and then that will be another route to solve for. I think here in Amazon Pay, you're calling it low internet as an experience. That would be another use case. So there are many use cases. I don't know if anyone want to say something about, well, maybe we should start actually then focusing on wrapping up and talking about where do we see the future here for offline payments complementing the online payments that we already have today, and go around for everybody to say something about, does offline payment have a role to play, and what do we see, say, 5-10 years from now, or where will it fit in? I don't know, Mehul, do you want to start? You have the mic already.
Yeah, so when you're saying use case, right, it depends on the market as well. Okay, so probably for India, it is only to address low ticket size transaction. Okay, and then it could be offline, which can be handled through something like UPI Lite. Okay, but having said that, if let's say one is touching at a market like Africa, okay, what they say is that let's assume there is no internet connectivity. One, the second is that assume that the user doesn't even have a phone. Okay, and that's a large chunk of customers in Africa. For them, the offline payment could be just a card, okay, where the money is loaded into the local chip on the card, and then this user will go around wherever and will tap and do transaction. Only the merchant may or may not have internet connectivity. The user definitely will not have internet connectivity. So hence what I'm saying is the use case would vary depending on which market. But let's say for us in India, at least, I think a low ticket size transaction where there is a specific dead spot, right, where let's say for example in this building, or use cases like in flight, somebody is trying to do transaction at a in a sea. Okay, those transactions can be handled through offline payments. But here the internet penetration, at least in India, is about 58%, okay, of the population, and the cost of internet in India is comparatively the lowest. For example, 1 GB internet connectivity in India is about 13 rupees, which is, for example, in US is about 10 times that. Right, so hence here the penetration is much higher, but let's say in Africa, probably people doesn't even have a mobile phone, and for them the use case could be very, very different. Every transaction could be an offline transaction, probably 80 to 90% transaction could be an offline transaction in some of the cities in Africa.
So I think one of the use cases that I feel that it kind of fits in really well is I think the transit in itself. I think as I think India is getting to that space wherein I think Japan or like London is in terms of like mass transit, I think that very high network congested zones that have very high volume and low value transactions, I feel there is a very strong potential of offline payments to solve that, like NPCI in itself is doing with NCMC, but I think there are more innovations that are needed on that space. So I feel transit is a big opportunity for offline payments.
I think just to support, I'll not be surprised since last 10 plus years we have built NETC, the overall architecture infrastructure, and it will go a lot of changes post digital rupee coming into the picture. I think whatever investments we have done, it will be overlooked considering many aspects, right? Because it's in-transit experience also matters. It's not only payment experience, the way we do on various payment channels. And the way we have seen channels moving from ATM POS to the mobile phone to the more or less, it is going to be more and more invisible. While we have seen QR code adoption, but I think millennials and the way we look at the transaction should be more seamless, more customer friendly, and the way technologies evolved from 5G to later on things. So I think edge computing, quantum computing, cloud computing, and that's why will give larger adoption of many more other payment transactions. I think so online as well as offline will prevail for longer period. Every continent and every country will have their own expectations around that. But the technology in the backend should be in a such a way that let it be adopted by customer, whether they want it online or offline, or in the backend, let us put those kind of a parameterization in core as well as a transaction switches, how we want to support those things. I think the way mobile phones are also now getting a lot of innovations, and I'll not be surprised the way it should have been configured back in 2017-18, those wallets. I think this is the right time to bring on a lot of programmability on a secure elements of phones. So not only phones, but many other IoT gadgets will act as those payment devices. And that will bring on a lot of offline protocols between device to device, and that will become bringing a lot of a cost down. And as soon as the cost becomes down, everybody goes online in an offline way. So I think while there is a lot of innovation, lot of things are happening, and we always anticipate based upon what we have today as a part of a communication devices and so on. But eventually next 2-3 years, the bandwagon will be so heavy, everything should go online. That is why I think 5 billion plus people have internet or smartphones. While we talk about taking care of a feature phones or taking care of a customers having offline connectivity, I think that every nation or everybody is looking at how more things will be online. So over a period of, as you said, what is next after 10 years? I think more channels will change. Channels will go from mobile to augmented reality, virtual reality, and there will not talk about offline. It has to be online altogether. I think that's the beginning. This kind of a token-based economy will come in the form of a digital rupee and many other currencies. Let's look forward how it will bring on right momentum. Yeah.
All right. I think maybe Lalitha, do you want to? No, she is. In the interest of time, as you say. Yeah, I know, and you're standing there now. That means that the session is over. I want to thank the panelists. Please give them a round of applause, and thank you so much for listening. Thank you.